came right on back as we are discussing the Black agenda and the Black vote with the upcoming November election, but also how this even spills into our local elections. So I have a classmate of mine on. I finally got him on the show. I did broadcast his Rebirth to Redbird meetings, and it was always an honor and a thrill to attend those. So I have the Honorable Casey Thomas, who is a former City Council member of District 3. So good morning, classmate.
Good morning. Good morning.
Right?
Good morning. Good morning.
So, Casey, go ahead and introduce yourself to the viewers who may not know you and what you're up to, and then we'll just go ahead and just start chopping it right on up.
Sounds good. Good. Well, I'm glad to be here. It's a long time coming. And it's just, I'm Casey Thomas, former Mayor Pro Tem and Council Member for District 3. I served on the council from 2015 to 2023. And we made a lot of great accomplishments as a community partner with the community partner with Changa to bring about the Community Police Oversight Board and have a first ever monitor of community police oversight, which is important. After leaving the council, I started an organization, Our Vote, Our Voice, which is a nonpartisan organization focused on voter registration, education, voter mobilization. We incorporated legislative advocacy because we have a legislative session coming up in January.
Yes.
And currently I serve as the State Political Action Chair and the first Vice President of the Texas NAACP. Our president is currently running for Austin City Council, so I'm acting as president of the state NAACP. So we're in the process of registering voters all over the state of Texas and making sure everyone knows what the issues are and having the largest black turnout we've ever had in the state of Texas. Our goal is 70% of the black vote all over the state of Texas.
Oh, wow. That is amazing. So, Changa, how do you feel about that?
I think that's awesome. I think, we definitely need folks to get out to vote, but we also we need an agenda. We need locally here, we just need to come together and start having these conversations. I think it's great that you doing this because I think the piece that I've seen that's missing on a national conversation, but also a local conversation, is what do we learn from having our first black president?
Right.
What do we learn from, this last administration, Biden administration, and now that we understand too, it's crystal clear and concrete the leverage and the power that we have as the African American community, as the most unified and one of the most educated electorates, of bodies of voters in the country. We are the power of the Democratic Party.
Right.
And so what are we going to do with that power here locally and nationally?
Yes, and you bring up a really good point, Changa, with, traditionally, we vote democratically, and I do want to point out just the power of our vote. When Bernie Sanders was leading in the primary, it was like a switch got turned, like somebody made a phone call, and everybody in South Carolina showed up that was black and voted, and then Biden took over the primary.
Congressman Clyburn, give him his props. South Carolina
right.
Congressman said, I'm with Joe, you know Joe, and they supported him, and he helped Joe win the nomination.
So the biggest, thing that I've seen on social media, and I'm sure you guys have seen it, and I've walked my precinct and have gotten chewed out by people with, they don't do anything for us, yada, yada, yada. And it's like, well, you need to participate. And so having that agenda is primary, but also having that education, which is why I started the show, to get people to understand these roles and understand the power that these roles have. But since we do have so much political currency, how do we really leverage it to make sure that legislation that we want isn't being set aside, or we're being told, wait your turn? Because that happens a lot. Go ahead, Casey.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And Changa hit it on the head. What are lessons we learned from the presidency of Barack Obama? What lessons have we learned in the event that VP Kamala Harris becomes president that we can apply? One is accountability. We were afraid, and we've got to give ourselves, I'm not going to say a pass, but we've got to be understanding about the fact that we were learning right along with Barack Obama. We had never experienced having someone who looks like us
Be in the presidency.
in the most powerful position in the world. And so we were afraid. Many people were afraid, you know what, especially after that first election, that if we held him too accountable, if we pushed him too hard, that it may not allow him to get reelected. However, we know in the past, whenever we've come together, we've held elected officials accountable, we've seen legislation pass. Look at what Dr. Martin Luther King and those during that era, when they went to the White House and they met with the president, Kennedy, and told him, hey, these things we want to see you do. He said, I need some power in order to do it. Go get us some power. And they begin to organize, and they begin to advocate, and they begin to say, you know what? We're going to be in the streets until we see some change happen. We've got to now have our agenda ready.
Yes.
So if and when she's elected, we already have an agenda. We're already strategizing on how to advocate and implement that agenda. And we got to do that same thing at the city level, the county level, and woe be on us at the state level. But we've got to organize now, because there's going to be a point in time when the pendulum is going to swing. So we've got to already have our agenda ready for implementation.
So what does that agenda look like?
I got some ideas.
Yeah, I got some ideas too. I think that, like, when I tell people about this, I think people try to overcomplicate it. We know what our problems are in our community.
Because our problems are everybody's problems.
Right. And we know what the crisis points are in our communities.
Yes.
Like, if you look at the city of Dallas or Dallas County or whatever, I mean, any area that you want to look at, I mean, from housing, which you worked on exclusively.
Yes.
If you look at economic development, if you look at environmental issues, if you look at educational issues, if you look
criminal justice,
there are, I think every black person you talk to could mention something top of mind, and it'll probably be 80% of us will be in agreement that that's an issue.
Right.
So like, it's really just about having those conversations and having those conversations on a local level and synthesizing that all in. And I would like to say too, in case you didn't mention this, but even before you got elected to councilman, we were working on Black Agenda.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah, and I'll let you talk some more about that. But I think it is we need to take all of our issues, our most critical issues, and we need to create a framework that people, when we talking to people about what we want in our communities, it summarizes it, right? And then we need to take our best and brightest, like you, Casey, other people.
Right.
We got enough excellence and enough brain power in our community
to push it,
that we can say, this is the problem and this is the solution and this is how we fix it.
And this is, step by step how we're going to get this achieved. So, because Casey, I mean, I live in District 7. I was coming to your meetings going, what can I glean from you and parlay it in District 7 to help solve housing issues, drug issues? Because we have houses now, I learned, that aren't selling because of a drug problem. So working on getting that solved. And it's like, I know it can feel overwhelming at times, especially for those that are not politically astute. So how do we reach out to them so they can understand that they're not invisible and their problems aren't invisible?
Yeah, so what I want to do, I'm gonna answer that, but I want to pivot back to what Changa was talking about. I got elected as president of Dallas NAACP in 2007.
Yes.
And shortly after I was elected, Changa was our press publicity chair. We sat down and had a conversation with some of our respected elders in the community about what would a black agenda for Dallas look like. So there was a draft that was developed years ago, and what we did, we took that draft, we had conversations with, at the time, President of Urban League, Dr. Beverly Mitchell Brooks. We thank her for her service, and our SCLC president at the time. And we began having conversations and inviting other neighborhood and well-respected community leaders to the table to say, let's look at what this agenda would look like. We drafted Changa, and I'm drawing a blank on who's the author of the Constitution, but I know who the author of the Black Agenda was.
Oh, look,
It was
I used
Changa
to
Higgins.
attend his meetings that he used to have at Common Desk. And I went back, yes. And I miss those sessions. We need,
What we're gonna have to do again.
yes,
So
exactly.
that brings us to the present. So we were able to develop that agenda. We had all of the, it was a local election, open mayor seat, council race. We had every candidate for city council and every candidate for mayor. We presented the agenda to them, and we had both candidates for mayor. When Tom Leppard and Ed Oakley were running to sign the agenda, what happened was it was the accountability piece. Once they were sworn in and in office, we didn't have people committed to hold them accountable to implement that agenda. So we talk about lessons learned. Over the past 15 or so years, we've had an opportunity to learn a number of lessons. And how do we
Stop
grow from
repeating
that?
the same thing.
Exactly. What we have to do is we have to be committed
Right.
to hold elected officials. Now I'm on the other side. Hold elected officials, hold those who say we're going to support the issues that are important to you accountable. I give you a simple example. AIPAC, the Political Action Committee for Israel, they have one issue. Are you committed to the interests of Israel? If you say you are, they support you. If you say you're not, if you waver, they don't. We've got to identify 3 issues.
Right.
We can do a community survey, take the results of the survey, and those top 3 to 5, but I would say 3 issues, whatever they are, say these are our issues, these are the issues that are priority for our agenda at the city, county, state level, and say, are you going to support this? If you do, we support you. If you don't, we don't.
We're going to walk you out of office.
That's simple.
That's simple. And I have definitely told people that if you're not happy with your elected official, show up and vote them out. And you instill the fear in the candidates so they perform the way you need them to, and you're not going to get 100% of what you want. So that's a given. But you shouldn't be sitting back feeling like you only got one thing. You only got 10% of what was important, and you watch them ignore your phone calls and emails and whatnot. And as the commoners, as I like to say, you know, we hold the currency and the power. And it's like you brought up fear of not pushing that envelope to get things done and hold people accountable. And I do want to bring up from the last presidential election when Trump was, you know, campaigning and telling black folks, you know, what do you have to lose by voting for me when, you know, historically, statistically, we vote Democratic. And it was kind of like, well, what are you going to do? So painting the picture that our vote is just for free. And that's a slap in the face.
And to add on to what he was saying about the process of the agenda, and I'm sitting there thinking about it, and it's like, it's the same thing we need to do now. Another thing we need to do, a lesson that we learn is, you know, the average voter, if you say I'm gonna say in the southern sector, when I talk about black community, although
Right.
we're spread all over Dallas,
Right.
but in Dallas County, but you know, is, you know, a baby boomer. You know, they are a little older than us. You know, they
Right.
and they tend to vote by who they trust.
Right.
Who's been in office. That's why we
Right.
got folks who've been in office forever, because
Yes.
they vote for who they trust.
Yes.
So the same thing that we
Or what's
exper-
familiar.
Yeah, what's familiar. So the same thing that we experienced with Barack Obama, when Casey was saying we were scared to press him. We have people here locally that people are like, well, I'm not going,
Rock the boat.
Yeah, I'm not going to press him, but that agenda. So we're gonna have to do some education too.
Yes.
With our
Yes.
voters, particularly our elders in our
Yes.
communities, to say, look, right, like here's what's important for us, and if so and so ain't for that,
Right.
no more.
But here,
We got. So it's an education piece we got to do, because our primary voters, 60 plus in the community, right?
and it's kind of like they're not thinking about what will lie ahead
No.
after that vote has been done.
Yeah.
Because I've been speaking to Gen Zers, and I'm like, my folks didn't talk to me, my community didn't talk to me about, voting and why it was important and who to vote for and things to look for with voting. And I'm telling young folks, especially with November 5th coming around the corner and decriminalizing marijuana is on the ballot, and it's the Gen Zers Proposition R that they put their signatures down on it. And you're not going to have
supports decriminalization.
Right. And so, people who are in the baby boomer generation and even part of our generation are like, and it's like, but you don't participate. But you're pushing your ideals and only thinking myopically about how you feel about it and not what's for the greater good. And that's something we need to get away from.
Yeah. We've got to make sure that we help people to understand what's at stake. The NAACP just had a nationwide call where we rolled out our theme for the election, our messaging, the whole 9 yards. It's vote. Your lives are at stake. Your very lives are at stake. Your livelihood is at stake. Vote. And we want to make sure we have a sense of urgency over the next 30 days. We've got to create this sense of urgency. But then, after the election, we've got to focus on how to develop these local agendas for our community. Right after this election, we're having a statewide training. My fiance, State Rep-elect Aisha Davis, is going to be the first Zeta ever elected to the Texas State House.
Woo-hoo.
It's phenomenal when it comes to training on how to do legislative advocacy. She's
Right.
going to do a statewide training, D9 organization, NAACP, all of our partners about how to advocate at the local level. We're looking to do that in December. In January, I'm going to train all of the units across the state of Texas how to develop a local agenda for for school board, county commission, and city council. These things we have to do now, and we begin thinking about it now, because that election, I'm telling you, 30 days will be here and gone before you know
It sure will.
And we've got to have a plan now of how we're going to hold individuals accountable to implement those things that are most important to us.
I think that's more important than even voting, is pressing the accountability, because that is something that, countless people, they're just going to do whatever they want to do. If you let them, they will run over us, they will take our votes for granted.
Right.
And there's something to be said for all the jockeying that ends up
Right.
happening for our vote. And so I'm gonna have a Mayor Eric Johnson moment when he was still state rep, and he called out the Democratic Party about, same old, taking votes for granted. Like, don't call on black women to come and do the saving and get somebody elected, and then we're forgotten about. But our part of that responsibility is pressing
Absolutely.
the issue.
I'm going to say this, I'm going to pass the mic.
Casey.
Hey, thank you. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to pass the mic. What's the purpose of electing someone to represent you if once they get in position, they're not going to implement the agenda and the priorities that you elected them for? What is the purpose?
Right. So, I mean, it's just like you just have a figurehead and you get to celebrate, first black president, first black woman president, first woman president. And it's like, okay, but now what?
Yeah. I mean, our agenda is how we move past that. Because right now, you know, we are, and rightfully so, you know, black folks in America, we want to see the first black woman president. We want to vote for the first black woman
Right.
president, right? But how do we move this past being a performative?
Yes, a novelty.
Yes, a novelty. And the way we do that is with an agenda. And like, I want to go back to that education piece.
Yes.
A lot of folks don't understand power. They don't understand what unity looks like. They think we all got to be thinking alike and we all got to be the same and all of that. But no, that's not true. We do have common themes and common problems and a common agenda in our community.
Okay,
Right,
yeah.
and the Black Voters Project just came. Report came out that did a multi-year research study with black voters. They had like 2,000 black voters, and they tracked them and followed them, and came back with the last election, and then they came back and polled them with this election, and so. There was all these stats and all this insight that they got from that. But one of the things is that there were those core themes that came out in that survey, in those findings, that if you go look at the Black Economic Agenda that did a couple years, they polled black folks. It's one of the largest
Right.
research projects that ever happened in the black community, and they asked those questions. Those economic themes that are there came up. All of the same things came up. So people got to stop saying that, yes, we're not monolithic,
Right.
but the conditions in our community have a common thread. And if that's the case, then we can, just like we can look on a national level and you can look at every city in this country where black folks are, we going to see patterns.
Yes, we are.
In the problems and the crisis points.
Right.
And so from a local standpoint, you know, we have those issues, and we do have a common agenda that we can agree upon. That's what unity really is. It's not
Right.
everybody have to say the same
We're
thing.
not lock and step,
Yeah,
and
everybody
yeah.
got to be part of the same
Right.
even party or whatever, right? Like, this is something that could be bipartisan.
Right.
You know?
Yes.
And so
And make people
Yes.
jockey for our votes versus,
That's right.
you know, doing the performative thing and picking up the phone call and we march out and just kind of blindly vote for folks.
Yeah.
So with that, I definitely want to bring up, you know, this divide with black men that is going on where, you know, they are very much anti Vice President Harris, and I get, you know, not being happy with performance, and I'm like, what VP has ever been out there stomping the ground and doing a bang up job? They're all kind of in the shadows, but the I want to say the manosphere type guys that are just very adamant that, you know, women can't lead, too emotional, you know, and all of the rhetoric that has gone on with all candidates, not just specifically her, how to overcome that and not necessarily say you need to vote specifically for this person because, but more of you need to start digging deeper into why you want to vote a particular way.
So I'm gonna make a couple of points. One is there were rumors that VP Harris, when she was Attorney General and DA, had locked up all these black men, and research showed and facts showed it was about 40, no more than 50.
Right.
So we have to be intentional about debunking a lot of misinformation that's going on in our community. And then you hit on the other thing. Some men, unfortunately, do not feel comfortable with a woman in leadership.
Right.
That's the bottom line. They couch it
Regardless of her ethnicity or race.
Right. They couch it behind a lot of other things. Well, she didn't do this, and when she was in office, she didn't do this. And as VP, she didn't. What's the role of a vice president?
Right.
Vice president
First off, tell me that.
is to do what the president assigns them to do. They don't have their own agenda. They are carrying out the duties of the
They
president.
back up the president.
Exactly. So we've got to get facts out. We've got to make sure people understand facts, not alternate facts, but real facts and factual information. And I think when we look at what happened over the course of about 72 hours from the day that President Biden announced that he was going to step aside to the day the women, black women came together and did the black women call with 40,000 women. The next day, 40,000 black men came together, and the amount of money that was raised.
Yes.
That's the other factor. The black
Yes.
women raised over $1 million. Black men
Yes.
raised over $1 million. Then you had the white women who came together, raised over $1 million.
And then
men,
white
dudes.
men. Yeah.
You know, LGBT, everybody came. Now you got the athletes for coming. That gave the momentum that was necessary. Plus, something that's not talked about is it was black women like Donna Brazile and Maya Morris who were in position within the DNC who said, you know what, you're not going to be able to pass over this black woman. This $80 million that's set aside for Biden and Harris, only Harris can get that money. So any other candidate, they got to start from the beginning. So
Right.
having people strategically in position to make sure that VP Harris did not get passed over, because there was people who wanted an open primary at the convention,
Yes.
which would have been an unmitigated disaster.
Right.
And so the momentum that stirred for her, it was intentional, it was strategic. It's 30 days left. All the talk, it's time to put all that aside. This is Monday's the last day to register new voters. If we're going to
Yes.
register voters, we got to get out there today, tomorrow, Monday. But then after that, we've got to continue to educate people on the differences. If Kamala Harris was running against any other Republican candidate, she would possibly be behind instead of the race being tied. But when we look at President Trump, you understand and identify what a person's gonna do by their past.
Right.
We know what he did when he asked, what do you have to lose? 1 million black lives during the pandemic. 1 million people, black people
But
died.
I got that stimulus check though.
During the pandemic.
I think I got my stimmy.
I'm gonna debunk another rumor. He wasn't the one. It was Congress who
I know.
passed that. And he, as the president, signed it. He wasn't really in support of it.
He was not.
So he intentionally lied to the American people continually during the pandemic because he didn't want to look bad politically. He felt like the pandemic was going to hurt him politically. But because his lies were exposed, he was defeated. Yes, he did lose. He has admitted that he lost. And it's time for us to move forward and not give him another chance to destroy this country.
So, yeah, please do.
So about the question about black men, I think we need to make sure that we don't believe the hype too. Like social media,
Oh gosh, yes.
is very loud. Right, the people that are on social media are very loud. But even if I would encourage everybody to go look at the Black Voters Project 2024 survey findings, because
You know the website? You know what?
I'm going to add it
if you
on.
Google Black
Yeah.
Voters Project,
I'm
you
gonna
can
look at that
find
this
it.
weekend.
But if you look at those numbers, you will see that once VP Harris became the nominee, that there was like a large spike in black folks who were undecided, black folks who were not going to go to the polls, and black men that said they were going to vote for VP Harris now that she became the nominee. And so, like, you look at that, you look at those numbers, and then you look at the numbers historically too. Like, I think the narrative that there is, I mean, this America. It's a patriarchal society.
Yes.
So yes, there are currents of all men that don't want to see women in leadership. But I think it is being played up and made bigger than it is, because if you look at the numbers, like
Right.
Congresswoman Crockett said not too long ago, black men right behind black women in numbers when it comes to support for
Yes.
the party.
That's true.
Right.
So what are we really? We just got to make sure that we really look. I'm a numbers dude, and so I'm looking
Yes,
at these numbers.
looking at the facts.
Yeah, I'm looking at the numbers. I'm like, this ain't true. It's just loud.
Right.
Right. And
Right.
so we got to be able to cut through all of that stuff. And I know it's hard when, most people go on to YouTube and TikTok and Instagram for their news now.
Yes.
But that's not necessarily news and not necessarily the facts. Really, the reality is outside of maybe a 10, 12 percentage, 13, 15 percentage points that has historically been there as black men that have voted for the Republican Party. Outside of that, black men have unequivocally stood with black women in voting for the candidates. So don't believe that. That's right.
Well, and I'm bringing up, as you are tuning in and hearing Changa Higgins back on the show this weekend to discuss the black vote and our agenda, and being joined with the Honorable Casey Thomas, and discussing, the loudness that's out there, because, it is one positive about it is that it does bring up dialogue and gets conversations going, because usually the people, and I find that the people who are the loudest about that, when you present them with facts, they get super quiet. And, I just tell everybody that critical thinking, will get you in trouble, because although we talk about all the individualism, it's still a club and a herd mentality, and people don't want to stand out there on their own. And to get back to that accountability piece, that is a huge part, is standing firm and digging your heels in. And I have preached on this show, since I've been doing this since 2016, your local elections are super important, because those are the elected officials that are closest to your doorstep. And we have the most abysmal turnout then. We are going to see over 50% turning out in these precincts that usually turn out, 1% or 5% during city council races. And making sure that we're interviewing the candidates, we're asking difficult questions, and then going and screaming at those city council meetings when you need something done and it's not getting done. And also showing up here to the show, because I've been bringing you elected officials since 2016, so you can ask the questions, so you can get in their face, So we have to do our part, and I get voter registration is so important, but what is our agenda to get people to actually turn out once they have registered?
Glad you asked. That's where the education piece has to be in place. We started educating voters through our Voters Our Voice back in January. We do a monthly voter education forum at 4 Oak Cliff, in Oak Cliff, the old YMCA building. We do it every third Wednesday, and we've done it every month except for 2 since January. Our next one is on the third Wednesday this month, and we're going to be providing sample ballots. We're going to be giving people information in terms of when early voting starts, when the election days are, where you can go vote, all that. It's all about education. We partner with the League of Women Voters. They do a voter guide. That voter guide has side by side each candidate in the primary, and then when it's a general election, what the candidates, where they stand on the same issues. You ask the same questions to each candidate. We've got to provide that information. They have QR codes now on bookmarks where you can look electronically. They have the hard copy that they hand out. We've got to educate over the next 30 days. I'm going to say 2 weeks starting Monday.
Right, because early voting is going to start soon.
Absolutely. We want everybody to vote the first day of early voting. We don't want you to wait. That way you can spend the next 9 days getting everybody else who didn't go out to vote. We want to have historical voter turnout, and when we see the numbers the first day, that's going to set the tone for the rest of early voting. But it's education. The other thing is, and Changa will love this, 365-day organizing.
Yes.
We've got to organize. We've got to talk to people year-round. In season, out of season. We can't wait until the election time, because what do people say? Only time we see you is at election time.
Yes.
If you see me every day, if you see me every week, then when it's election time, all you're doing is seeing me another day.
Right.
So those are the habits that we have to develop, and we can't wait. Starting in January 2025, we've got to begin implementing 365-day organizing, mobilization in our communities.
And I would say this too. When you look at, let's be clear. Like what we're seeing is a white nationalist movement
Okay.
And the Republican Party is just the political expression of that white nationalist movement that's happening. It's a vehicle.
Right.
And so, we as black folks have to get back to what we know works. Their playbook has not changed.
Not one
Their playbook
play
has not
not changed at
this
all.
Make America Great and all of that, that's a slogan from the 1920s and even was used during Reconstruction.
Teach.
When black folks was free and started getting in political office,
Yes.
that was really the time we had most black Congress people
Yes.
in history.
Yes.
Right? There was a white nationalist movement that sparked the KKK and all of that.
Right.
And
Because it's all
Make
about
America Great, all of that stuff, all of these slogans that you hear Trump say and different people say, they were used back then. Their playbook has not changed.
Yeah, it's just all a perception. I'm losing power.
White resentment.
It is. It is. And so if their playbook hasn't changed, what are we doing? Like
Sleeping and not reading.
where we know it. We spend all that time and energy talking about Project 2025, but where's the Black Project 2025?
Or we're sitting up here talking about how, the candidates aren't black enough, and oh my God. Talk about rhetoric. Talk about rhetoric. Because I want people to understand this. So, you talk about Kamala's mother being classified as white. Now, we're talking about, in the 60s and 70s. And Latinos, East Indians, they did not have their own racial category. They did not have their own racial category when it came to the census. And ain't nobody gonna pick black.
If you don't have to.
Ain't nobody gonna do it. If black folks didn't have to pick black, I'm sure a lot of us wouldn't pick it.
A lot of them
okay?
didn't back in the day.
Right.
Who's
If
gonna
you-
choose oppression?
Right. Who's gonna choose oppression? If you could pass, baby, they did. Okay. So she selected Caucasian because that was what they did back then. Middle Easterners did not have their own racial category. So for people to sit up here and say that she's not black and all this other mess, and it's like, well, what happened to the one drop rule? Barack Obama, he wasn't black. His mama is white. Okay, well, my biological father is white. So what does that make me? And I'm probably I'm having a Kamala moment where I'm having to catch myself because you know what I was going to say. Right. Right. So it's like, why are we playing these games to make noise? Because it does not matter. Are we going to hold the elected person accountable? I don't care if it's Ted Cruz. I don't care who it is. Even a precinct chair, because you can vote for precinct chairs. They end up on the ballot sometimes. So what are you doing to hold people accountable is the biggest thing. You can be purple.
I'm coming right behind.
Yeah, the agenda. Like the agenda is what's most important, right? Like no matter who changes in office, right? Like he
Yes.
said about AIPAC they're gonna ask you one or two things and that's it. Yes, no. It's a yes, no, clear
Right.
thing. Do you
Right.
support this or not? Right.
Right.
And so, but we gotta have the courage as a community, as black folks. We gotta have the courage to say we are important. We are
Right.
the soul and the force of the Democratic Party and leverage that strategically and use it.
Yes.
Right? Like,
Yes.
a lot of my friends, a lot of my comrades, would expect me to be sitting up here talking about the difference between the Republican Party, whatever. I don't care. Right? It's the agenda. Like, we have an agenda.
Right.
Where's our Project 2025?
Hello.
You know what I'm saying?
Hello.
Where's our response to that? You
Right.
know? And I'm just not talking about the Democratic. I'm real, Casey. I'm real critical of the Democratic Party. I feel like
Very much
the get
so.
out the vote efforts, the get out the vote efforts have not changed with the times.
No.
And the Democratic Party's messaging has not changed with the times.
No.
And I feel like they do a terrible job of speaking to the issues that are important to us and putting them issues on kind of on the back burner, right?
Yes.
The Black Voters Project, I keep going back to it because this has got so many nuggets in it, right? It even asked about what the issue, abortion was not even though it is very, very important, it was not the critical issue for
No.
Black voters.
No.
Right? And so,
How about making sure that I have a livable wage? Because we have demonstrated that $15 to $30 an hour still ain't enough to be able to support yourself in this day and time.
yeah, right. And so that was the highest issue. Jobs. And the Black Voters Survey, it overlays with the Black Economic Agenda Survey, which was jobs,
Yes.
wages,
Yes.
right? So what Black America is saying is all that's cool, but I need to be able to pay my light bill and my rent.
Right. Right. Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Let's
Yes.
start there on a very, very basic fundamental level. So,
Right.
So, I keep going back to this. We have to, the only way we're going to change the narrative, the only way we're going to get elected officials to begin to have conversations that are centered around us is to put that agenda together locally here in Dallas.
Coming right behind them. So, wouldn't it be something if you had a neighborhood association, if you had a group of precinct chairs who had a send-off for the new city council member, the new state house member, the new state senator, and at the end of that send-off, they said, not only are we sending you off with our prayers and our encouragement, but we're sending you off with an agenda.
Right.
And this is the agenda we're sending you off with.
Right.
How much of a difference would it make once that state representative, once that council member, once that state senator got to Austin, got to City Hall, if they knew that, you know what, they sent me here with agenda. I had my own vision, had my own plan, but
Right.
this is something that's important to them.
Right.
How much of a difference do you think that would make?
It can be quite impactful, and as I even tell my viewers all the time, even if you don't elect that person, they're not in your district. Still get in their face. Push your agenda then, because as I hear in the loud social media sphere with rhetoric, one of the criticisms, especially when it comes to the Democratic Party, is being too pro-LGBTQIA. And there is a huge Black population that fits into there, and it's like, your problems are still our problems. Regardless of where you are economically, it's the common denominator.
Right.
And how does that impact
Right.
the greatest number of people and pushing for that? Because what we have as an agenda, jobs and being able to pay your rent and buy food and whatnot, again, baby, it doesn't matter what you look like. You're still out here struggling to make your ends meet. And it's like people don't want to coalesce and come together,
Right.
especially when it comes to supporting an agenda that's ours, because it's like, our lives don't matter. Pandemic demonstrated that. But it's like, what we're asking for and fighting for is
Right.
what everybody wants and needs.
Yeah, well, I think it's important if you look and see how people got where they are. I guarantee you, if you look and see how the LGBTQ community got to the table with some of the same grassroots strategies.
Yes, it
that
was. Yes.
we used during the civil rights movement. So why is it that we're no longer implementing our own playbook? And I'm gonna tell you why.
We got lazy.
That's part of it. We got comfortable.
Yes.
We have become
Yes.
comfortable.
We rested on our laurels.
I like to say this: we have been comfortable in a crisis. We have become comfortable in a crisis. If you're in a crisis situation and you're acting comfortable, then your condition is gonna be the way it is. It's gonna continue to get worse.
Oh, yeah.
Because we've developed a me, not we mentality. I'm good. hey, my
I'm
kids
living
good.
in my
I'm
suburb,
taking
making
care
my
of
6 figures.
exactly.
Yeah.
But we not good.
Right.
And until we get good, then I'm
Nobody's
not
good.
good.
Right.
And if we develop that mentality, then we'll see real change happen because we'll have that collective community that we once had that allowed us to overcome circumstances that we never thought we'd ever be able to overcome.
Yeah, go ahead, Changa.
Yeah, and I would say this, like, to your point about I'm in the me versus we, you know, about it's split half and half if you look at the numbers in America. Like, it used to be we were centralized in the urban areas.
Right.
Half of Black Americans now live in the suburbs.
Yes, we are.
Right.
Yes.
And so there is a me versus we thing, but like I tell people all the time, if you look at the numbers, there's several studies that have looked at Black generational wealth, Black mobility of even middle class people, and that Black boys, Black men that are raised in middle class homes have I think it was a 40 to 50% chance of not reaching the same mobility of their parents.
Oh, wow.
So you can't generational wealth, mobility, we good our way up out of this.
Right.
Because your children may not be able to achieve what you were
Have
able
the
to
same
achieve if you look at the
mobility.
statistics.
Right.
Right?
Wow.
So what are we gonna do?
Exactly.
Right? Like, you know what I'm
Exactly.
saying? Like, your success and your excellence can't save us.
Right. And then you bring up a great point. And again, gatekeepers and the older voters thinking just about themselves and not about the legacy or the impact those choices and those votes have. And nothing against our officials that have been in office for 1,000 years, but you've been there 1,000 years. Pass the baton. It should not be your identity that you should have a light. I mean, oh my gosh, I would be in Belize on a beach somewhere, snorkeling with very little clothing on, living my best life. Because I turned the dial a click or two, and I'm leaving it for the next generation to do that.
And there's some things that, like I said, we have gotten comfortable. We stopped using our playbook, which part of that playbook is you pull people up and you train people behind
Yes.
you.
Reach one, teach one.
That was part of our tradition, right? And something happened in the last 20, 30 years where a generation of us fought hard to get into places where they are, right? And we got some warriors who fought that to get to where they are for the community.
Right.
But then they got there and they stayed there.
Yes.
They didn't train their replacements.
Yes.
I gotta come behind you on
Yeah.
Yes,
Go ahead.
please do, Casey.
You know, I've talked about this in small circles, but I'm gonna talk about it in a large crowd. If you look at the affirmative action generation, you look at the individuals, or you look at those who benefited from affirmative action, that was the first generation. You know, that was our Black golden time of the day in honor
Right.
of Frankie Beverly and Mays.
Right.
That was our golden time of day. You
Yes.
see, we don't talk about making America great. That was the greatest time for us as Black people
Yes.
in this country.
Yes.
Because that's when we began to reap the benefits of
that labor
civil
that we
rights.
put in
Exactly.
place.
But what
Yes.
happened is that's the same generation who hoarded all of those things, didn't teach the generation behind them about the challenges and the struggles. And so they took
And how
all
to
the
keep pushing
benefits,
forward.
took all the benefits, and so the generation that came behind them had to pick the torch up off the ground and had to move things forward
Or
on
snatch
their
it out
own.
of their hands.
Literally fight for it.
Right.
Yes.
Right. As we
Yes.
did with the Dallas NAACP. But we're not going to go there. But those are the things that has to happen. When about my second year on the city council, I had 3 millennials that
Yes,
ran
you did.
that ran in the race against me. Now, I won with over 70% of the vote, didn't have a runout, but my point was, if our generation didn't step in then Gen Z would have missed our opportunity to
Right.
serve on the Dallas City Council. And
Right.
my point of saying this is, that next generation, they were going to take the torch, whether we passed it or not.
Right.
But we had to be wise enough and smart enough to understand that, you know what? I'm in this position for a short period of time. And when my time is up, I need to make sure that I groom and I pass the torch, which I did to Councilmember Aaron Gracie. And that was a model
Right.
that every black leader, whether city, county, state, can follow.
Right.
Once your time is up, look amongst the group, see who's capable, coachable, and pass the torch to them, and then hand the torch, but be there as an advisor. I see
Right.
myself now as an elder statesman.
Right.
But how many former black elected officials do we see today that's taking on that role of saying, you know what, I'm going to be here to coach and advise, but I'm
And
not going to
answer
try and take the
questions.
torch back.
Right.
I'm done.
Right.
I say that
Or-
publicly, I'm done. I'm not running for re-election.
Or do this. Not sit up being that advisor and not trying to undercover push your agenda so you
Oh,
can still
absolutely.
reap benefits. Let them
with
be their own
with pure
individual
motives,
as, yes.
pure intentions, just to say, I want to see you be successful. Now, if you choose to go a different path, that's a whole nother conversation.
Right.
But I'm here to support you and guide you as long as you advocate for those things the community wants to see.
Right. That is the hugest piece.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that what you're talking about made me think about with the black agenda that we put together.
And we'll be bringing back.
We'll be bringing back, right? Like we selling this, yeah. We're going on record.
Yes.
Is we also, I mean, there was a forward to the black agenda, and we kind of talked about some of these issues, and that not only does our agenda have to address what we want, but it also has to talk about what we want our leadership, right?
Exactly.
Because there's some this whole scenario and the whole history you just got of the dynamic of power between like baby boomers, Generation X, Gen Z, you know, we got to speak to that. Right?
Exactly.
Like
Yeah.
we got to speak to that. Like we need, you know, I feel like Casey in a lot of ways is a model for elected as far as engagement with the community.
Big time.
You know what I mean?
Big time.
Is also, you know, he had a round table.
Yes, he did.
Policy advisors that I
Yes,
was a
he
part
did.
of,
Yes.
that would come and sit down and talk about this stuff, and we didn't all agree on everything either.
I would say Casey was the most visible
Most visible,
council
most
person I had ever seen in Dallas.
most collaborative.
Yeah.
And I don't think you get your flowers for that, brother. But you know, I think that we gotta set some expectations too about what we want to see
Right.
from our elected officials.
Right.
And that some people might be thinking that's a stretch, but I think that we are in a position now to where we have to do that.
Right.
You know, we have to outline like this is what we expect from you. We expect for you to not be in power forever. We expect
Right.
for you to engage a new group of people who are capable and coachable.
Yes.
We expect you to be collaborative. And
Yes.
I mean, we have models. He had a model. I mean, it's the same model that you see when you talk about people like Changa Higgins and
Yeah.
other people. They had policy roundtables. They would have their meetings before
Yes.
the council meetings.
Yes.
So they had community collaborative sessions
Yes.
to figure out what was the take they wanted on that policy. That's the kind of leadership that we need. That's how we're going to be able to move the needle and get to some of these problems and solving some of these problems in our community.
Yes, and definitely want to say that you should not look at this as a career, but as your contribution to the community. And if you're still making the community better, by all means, you know, you should be supported if you've been there 10, 15 years, 20 years, but at some point, step down. At some point, and I'm not saying this to take a dig at anybody, it's just a matter of getting fresh perspective out there, fresh eyes on things, because I have gone to companies and worked there and brought a whole new set of outlook on things, and people are like, oh my gosh, you're causing so much trouble. Well, I mean, if y'all were comfortable, then why'd y'all bring me here? You know, and that's the whole thing, is that stop being comfortable. You have your paycheck coming in every 2 weeks, you have your house, but what about everybody else who wants to participate and have that American dream and have their own house and have their comfort in their life? How are you voting to support everybody be able to achieve their dream in this land? Yeah, go ahead, Casey.
You know, the comfortability thing too, you know, like I'm a numbers dude, so I'm always looking at the numbers. And the reality is, you look at the indicators, we're in a crisis situation in Black America and in Dallas too. If you look at home ownership, we in a worse place than our parents were.
Yes, we
As
are.
far as home ownership, I was looking at DISD racial demographics the other day. Dallas is more segregated racially
Yeah,
Than before Brown versus Board.
than before Brown versus Board.
Definitely was.
yeah.
If you look across every aspect of society, and we are in crisis levels with what's going on in our community, and we really are not in a position to be comfortable. Just because we should learn from what happened when we did have the first Black president, and this time, what did we learn? We learned that we can't be comfortable. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it was great. You know what I
Right.
mean? We went to
Yes.
sleep. You know what
Yes.
I'm saying? We had, you know, this beautiful Black family as the head of the country,
And they criticized him because we felt like he wasn't doing enough for us.
yeah, and I mean, I got a bunch of critics. I ain't even gonna go there. But you know, what are we gonna do? You know,
Right.
what are we gonna learn from? The playbook hasn't changed. Even the playbook with how we seeing VP Harris and what she's doing, it's very similar
Right.
to what President Obama did. So what are we gonna do?
Yeah. How are we going to hold people
You
accountable?
know, I'm gonna follow him on something. Two issues, and we talk about issues that motivated Black people. Well, three, three issues that motivated Black people to vote in large numbers in 2020 was Donald Trump was a disaster. We needed to get rid of him.
Right.
The opportunity to pass the George Floyd Act.
Yes.
And the opportunity to pass the John Lewis Voting Act.
Yes.
People were energized and motivated because they believed that if President Biden was elected, Kamala Harris being the first Black vice president,
Right.
people were excited
And female
and
vice
hopeful.
president. Yes.
Black female vice president. People were hopeful of what that could become. What we don't talk about is the different branches of government and the fact that the president is the executive which signs legislation.
He
It is the
doesn't-
House
yes,
and the
the
Senate,
Senate.
that passes legislation. We never talk about the fact it was two U.S. senators who were Democrats who are both now independents. Let's think about that. That stood in the way
Right.
of removing the filibuster
Right.
that would allow the vote for both of those things. And because people were so hopeful that those two bills would pass because they had Biden as president and Kamala Harris as vice president, people were disappointed. People were borderline depressed. And they felt like, you know what, if we had a president, a Democratic president, a Democratic Senate and House, how could this not happen?
Because
But
you're
no-
not applying pressure. That's how it ends up happening. You being hopeful, thinking that somebody is going to give you something. Ain't nobody going to give you anything. And I'm going to quote Mos Def for Dollar Days after Katrina. Freedom is not free.
That's right.
You have to go out and take it. Don't expect your abuser, your oppressor to give
your-
you a daggum thing.
Or to be your teacher.
Or to be a teacher. Why are you giving up so much of your power to somebody else who put you in the position to be at the bottom of the barrel? And that is not just for Black folks, because the same things that we've gone through, the Latino community is going through, and their women are becoming more out educating their men. So it's the same dynamics, and we're not paying attention to it. So we could do this all day, all day, all day, all day. So in closing,
Bring us back after the election. Let's have a post-election discussion
yes,
about
most definitely.
what a Trump second administration or a Harris first administration would look like
Yes.
for Black folks.
Well, we can definitely close out 2024 with that, because last Saturday in November, no shows because it's the holidays, and you should focus that time on your loved ones,
Yep,
but
I
also
agree.
focus that time on pushing things that you want for your community, and not just come out when it's a presidential election, because come May, we're going to have municipality elections, school board elections. It is still going to be a time that you need to get out there and participate. Changa.
Yeah, and I'll just say, when we talk about the black agenda, there will be a black agenda for Dallas in May.
Quote him on that.
Hold him.
There will be, and we will be having events. We will be having sessions where we'll be getting people together and talking about this, and community surveys. It's gonna be data driven as well. But we need Black Dallas to participate, and we need you to think different, like I always say, and move different, as we always say, right? We got to think different and we got to move different, and it's time for us to come together and figure out what is most important for us and leverage our power, consolidate our power.
That is the biggest thing. We are powerful people, so I do want you to know what we're going to be talking about on next Saturday. Again, gentlemen, thank you so much. And
Thank
yes,
you for having me.
look for the invite for the post-election wrap-up and discuss all of that. And also, if you can, be an election clerk, be an election judge. It's not just voting. It's also participating in being delegates when it comes to primaries and going to the national level, but it's also being an election clerk and understanding how the voting process works.
And teenagers can do it too.
Yes.
Great opportunity to get paid and learn
Yes.
about the civic process.
Yes. So 17 3/4 is all you need to be in order to register. Is the last day to register to vote. But make sure that you're not just registering to vote, you are also turning back out and using that privilege that you have. So next Saturday, we're going to be talking about DNA and the appeal process when you have, it's kind of like the post-appeal process. Once you've already submitted your appeal and the justices have made their decision ruling on affirming or not affirming your case, and what does that look like. So make sure that you tune in for that, because speaking to the attorney that is going to come on Saturday, I learned a lot about DNA and what that means, and making sure that, again, our ordinances, our state laws, and our federal laws come from the agenda of the commoners and what we want our society to be.
Absolutely.
All right, so thank you, gentlemen, for coming
Thank
on.
you for having us.
Yes, and I'm glad that you're willing to come back on. And thank you for such
Let
a
us
quick
know when.
turnaround and coming back on. So, guys, see you next Saturday. Enjoy your family and friends.